Missy, our accountant, she.
Being as it's 5:05, I'd like to call the July Planning Commission meeting to order and look for a motion to adopt the agenda, any changes to the agenda. Look for a motion to adopt agenda.
Also move it be approved as handed out.
I'll second it.
Motion's been made and approved, seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Approval of the June 30th, 2021 meeting minutes.
I got a question on that. How accurate them gotta be? Because the date is wrong on the top.
Ooh.
So
Yes, that needs to be accurate.
Yeah. It says
So-
Thursday, the 30th, but we were here on Wednesday last month.
Did you want to make that change in?
And then it says I left at 5:25, but I left at 6:25. So I don't know how thorough them gotta be, but
Yes.
We'll
Want them accurate. That's why you review them.
They do that on purpose just to test us.
Yes. I'd look for a motion to approve the meetings with the following changes.
Also move.
And I'll second it.
Motion's been made and second to approve the meetings minutes from the June meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Public hearing regarding proposal of project plan boundaries and creation of tax incremental district number 3. Guess we'll turn that over to Phil.
All right, so first you have to open a public hearing. You need a motion to open a.
Okay, I need a motion and open the public hearing regarding the proposed project plans.
I'll make that motion.
Motion made,
1 second.
motion made and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Now,
All
Phil?
Okay.
You want to start? Or I can?
You go
All
ahead.
right. Good evening, everyone. Phil Costin with Ellers. Nice to be with you. I'm going to try to summarize this in a little bit of more concise way that I just went through with the Joint Review Board, but I want to give you a little information on kind of process as well, because that's important to understand. And then when I'm done, you could ask for input from the public afterwards. So we've been working on both TIDs for quite some time now, working with city staff and two different developers that are involved here. We are at a point now where we want to be able to bring this forward to start this process, enabling both developers to get moving on the project. So it's a bit timely from their standpoint that this kind of continues to move forward. But since this is new to many of you, there is a 3-step approval process. This is step 1 tonight. You hold a public hearing. After the public hearing, there's a project plan and corresponding resolution that we're going to ask you to hopefully approve, and then that will forward it on to the city council. We'll take that up at their meeting on August 10th. If it's approved by council on the 10th, it'll go back to the Joint Review Board, which just met. And that group has scheduled their meeting for August 21st at 2:30. So it needs 3 approvals to get through the process. This is the first approval to get through the first step of this. TIF is a bit of a mystery for many people as to exactly what it is. I'll try to give you just a real quick summary of what the program is and isn't. And I spent quite a bit of time going through the Joint Review Board with this, but what it is a funding mechanism primarily. So what it enables you to do is to pay for project costs identified in the project plan with a different fund. It's the TIF fund will be set up, and that's where you would pay for these project costs. If they're not paid for out of the TIF fund, it'll come from the general fund, from the water utility, from the sewer utility, from the general funds, wherever else, and it'll be borne by all the taxpayers if it's general fund and or water utility or sewer utility, by all the users if it's not paid for out of this fund. So this is a funding mechanism that is really being put in place that enables the city to pay for certain public costs public infrastructure costs and to provide incentives to developers to entice them to develop in New London. It's a tool that is used by most every community, over 500 people, I would say, around the state of Wisconsin. You had, this is TID 3 and 4. You had TIDs 1 and 2 that have been closed out for quite some time. So you haven't been in the, I'll call it TIF game for quite some time. So it's a funding mechanism. What it isn't, it is not a way to change normal city process. Normal city process is we're talking TID 3 now. SC Swiderski comes forward with their housing development. Because it's in the project plan doesn't mean they don't have to go through plan commission review and council approval. They still have to go through the same process. This doesn't change that at all. Same with TID 4 when we get to TID 4. So doesn't change any normal process that the city would have for review. It doesn't give the city a blank check to say, we're going to do all these capital projects without any approval by council now that it's in a project plan. It's still, all funding still has to go back in front of the city council for approval. That doesn't change either. The tax rate is exactly the same for properties identified in the project plan and outside the project plan. It's the same tax rate, same tax bill. It's what happens when the money is received. That's all the differences. And I'll talk about base value versus incremental value in a little bit. So it is not a different tax rate. It doesn't change how a property is taxed. It's just what happens with the money when it's collected. So those are some of the kind of what it is and isn't from a program standpoint. There's all kinds of rules and regulations tied to this program, which has been around since 1976, and it changes every biennium because somebody tinkers with it, and more than tinkers with it many times, and it changes a lot. So there's a lot of rules and regulations. I don't want to bore you with all those, but our role here is to make sure that the project plans that are being put in place meet all the statutory requirements, and it gets what the city wants done. That's our role. Take you through the process, file everything with the Department of Revenue, communicate with them if there are any kind of situations that they see. We talk to them on a daily basis, and just to make sure everything goes through smooth. So we are kind of the in between the state and the city, trying to make sure this all flows through, and working with the developers as well as your attorney and staff. So we have had a lot of discussion with the developers. We have a framework of a deal in both cases, which is nice at this point, because sometimes TIF districts are put in place a year ahead of, or 2 years ahead of some type of agreement or deal being put together. In this case, they're kind of going in hand. We would expect by August 10th to hopefully have a development agreement ready for approval along with the project plans, and that provides certainty around the TIDs more so than is in many cases. So I'll take you through TID 3 a little bit. I'm really here to answer questions as much as anything else, but I wanted to just kind of talk through what's happening here. And you have to trust me that some of this is put together for a reason, because it's going to look odd, and they always do. I'm going to have Chad jump around as usual. I'm sorry, I have to do this to you again. But if you start on page, the boundary map on page 7 of the project plan, you can see this really started a long time ago. We've been talking about the parcel that sits just south of the river. That's been vacant for some time. There's been a variety of developers that have come in. The developer that is proposing a development, SC Swiderski, is I think who the city is very comfortable with at this point to move this forward. They have come forward with a plan to develop this area. And that kind of drove the boundaries, but we've added to the boundaries for a variety of reasons. So that development is estimated to be somewhere between $5 to $6 million that's being proposed for that site. We've drawn the boundaries south along Pearl Street because we wanted to include some other adjacent properties that have the ability to either develop or redevelop. and also to provide some additional street improvements and parking along those areas to benefit businesses along there. Same going north of the river. We picked up half the downtown essentially along Water Street. And again, with the idea that there's the need for some street improvements. Water Street's going to be reconstructed. That this will help pay for a portion of that cost as opposed to it all falling on the tax levy. The little jut out to the north is parking, additional parking for the downtown. So the goal here is to use the development on the south side of the river, which will generate revenue and help pay for some of these other public improvements as well. So on the site that the little hand is on, where SC Swiderski is going to build, there are utilities on that site that will need to be moved. We didn't know the full cost of those, probably still don't know exactly until we get the full site plan, but estimated to be around 550,000 estimate at this point to move those public improvements. So that's the goal, is to provide an incentive to SC Swiderski to be able to pay for that cost of moving those utilities to help with their development. That's the initial main cost that would be paid for. Parking downtown, Water Street, Pearl Street improvements, and then parking south of Pearl are probably the next cost that we'll analyze the TIF district to make sure that there's revenue to pay for those. I mean, at the end of the day, we want to make sure this works financially so that you're not paying for a bunch of project costs and all of a sudden you're going, oh, we don't have the money in the TIF fund to pay for this. Where's it going to come from? We'd rather make sure that this works from a annual cash flow standpoint. So that's the boundary. It's a little weird looking, I know, but that's the boundary that's been laid out for the project plan. And there's, again, rationale of why we've incorporated all that. So if we go back to page number 3, there's an executive summary that we put together that outlines the type of district. This is what's called a mixed use district, meaning it has 2 different land uses. Housing can only be 35% of the total acreage. Estimated projects of about $1,250,000. We expect that number could increase a little bit because we're showing a very conservative value of around $4.4 million of new development. We think that number could be as high as $6+ million. But there's a direct correlation between the incremental value, that's the new development that occurs, and the amount of money you have to pay for projects. There's a direct correlation there. So if the value increases to $5 million, we could probably bump up the project cost to $1.4 million. If it jumps to $6 million, that could be $1.6 million or something like that. So there's this correlation between where the value comes in. In the development agreement, there's going to be a number in there. And that number is going to be that incremental value number. What are they going to guarantee as far as new development value? And they'll be conservative also. They're not going to want to put a number out there that's not achievable. They want to probably miss on the low side and hopefully the number is better. So we're using 4.4. We'd expect the number to be better. We're not counting on a lot of other development. If you look at the boundary, there are other areas in there that have the potential for development as well, especially along the river. So we expect more development could occur as well throughout this area that we're not really counting on too much. So that's the summary of what the plan would be. This isn't a blank checkbook that stays open forever. It's a maximum 20 years, meaning I'm not going to be here to see the end of it. Maybe alive, but not sitting here. But it's a 20-year maximum life, or until you've paid all the costs. Once all the costs have been paid and you've collected enough revenue to pay those, you're required to close out the district by statute. So a maximum is 20 years, and there's a good chance it'll shorten up from that a little bit. So that's the executive summary that kind of lays out the plan here. If you go to page 15, this is one of the misnomers of TIF. These are the parcels that are all located in the TIF. And if you go down to page number 15 at the bottom, it equals it's 10.574 acres of land. And the value is 2,352,000. That's what's there today. And that's called the base value. And the base value stays the base value for the life of the district. And why that's important is all the other taxing bodies get their piece of that 2.352 million. So I talked about the incremental value. I'll get to that in a little bit. What's there today, the school, the county, the technical college, and the city will all get what's there today for the life of the district. What the school, county, and technical college are going to forego is the new value that is generated here. And remember, I'm using 4.4 million. That new value, the full amount stays with the city. It doesn't get shared with the other taxing bodies until the TIF is closed out, then everybody kind of gets the benefit. Why? The reason is you have to answer the but-for test. But for TIF, these developments are not going to occur. Or not going to occur at the level that they're talking about, the density they're talking about, the value they're going to talk about, the timeliness of it. So that's why I mentioned the joint review board. They have a vote in this. The school, the county, technical college all have to vote for this. So they're not being shut out of the process. They're in the middle of the process. And they have the final vote in this. So we have to make a strong case as to why we're using TIF. Because again, they're going to forego that incremental, the new value that's generated from these new developments. We have identified a couple of projects that are just outside the boundaries of the district or adjacent to North Pearl Street and North Water Street. Those are large scale large scale reconstruction projects of those roads that are on the horizon, $6+ million. As you can see in this project plan, we have a small amount of that coming from the TID fund. The rest isn't going to come from the TID fund. We don't have the money for it, but a small amount will come from the TID fund. It'll just help kind of another fund to pay for those costs outside of grants or levy dollars or whatever. So the project costs are on page 25. I've talked about them already. Utility relocation, it's an estimate of $550,000. Downtown parking is an estimate $100,000. North Water Street and North Pearl Street improvements. We can see we've identified a small amount of money going to help pay for those projects. Parking near South Pearl Street, we again allocated a small amount of money there. Downtown streetscaping beautification, we allocate money there as well because we think there's we want to see the downtown thrive like you do, and we think there's additional benefit that can come from the TID as long as we and why not use some of that money to help with the downtown? Could be as simple as streetscaping, could be planters, could be whatever in the downtown to help pay for that as well. So that's how we got to the $1,250,000. That number again we think could increase. If there's budget lines that would increase, it would probably be 3 and 4 Water Street and Pearl Street, because those are big projects and we like to allocate a little more money to those if need be. The good thing about TIF is that you don't have this as your specific budget. So if the utility relocation comes in at 400,000, then we don't need 550. The money can roll into one of the other projects. Okay, it's not defined as that's the actual budget number. These are what the project's estimates are right now. So how does this all work? Well, we see development occur from on the next page or 2 pages in from S.C. Swiderski. That's the housing development with the T. I guess I should expand that range. Some miscellaneous development that we expect to see. I think this number, when we agree upon a number, will increase a little bit, probably closer to $5 million, and then the budget will go up a little bit. So that money comes in. It generates increment, which is on the next page, and that sits in a TID fund. Money cannot go to general operations of the city. Can't go to pay Chad's salary. Sliver of it could, but not all of it. A sliver of it could, but not all of it. It's got to go to the projects defined in here. And that's why this plan is important. That money generates, you see the column, like, the horizontal column that is tax increment. We're expected at build out somewhere around 100 to 110,000. That could be 130, 140 if the value comes in quite a bit more. That sits in that TID fund, and then you use that money to pay for those projects over time. So if you go to the next page, we have to make some estimates on how the money will be borrowed. It won't look like that. We'll work with Judy on putting that together. But we have to put together kind of what it could look like. And then a cash flow at the end of the day on page 30 has to be developed. And what we're hoping for and what our goal is that at any time this TID fund stays in the black. Meaning we want to match the revenues with the expenditures and make sure there's enough revenue to pay for all the costs that have been identified. And we'll analyze that working with city staff and make sure that if there's debt taken out, it's structured right to match the revenue stream, and that TID fund stays healthy through the life. And as that TID fund builds up, it could be used for other projects as well. That may not be defined in the project plan. You could go through an amendment process and add projects down the road that you may not have thought of now through this process. So that's what we have to go through. The last couple of pages of the project plan are all items in the statutes that are required. Things like, what's going to happen with, how does this fit within the zoning ordinance, master plan, building codes? Is anybody being displaced? We don't expect anybody displaced as part of this. So we have to answer all those questions through this process as well. So that's a kind of a relatively quick summary of TID number 3. It's a pretty well thought out project plan to make sure that not only the development works, but that there's other public community benefits that come from it, like parking and downtown beautification and helping to pay for some of the road project costs.
I have a question. So the funding that you get, I know our process, does that change our process at all on how we do the job? Swiderski then
Nope.
borrows the money to pay the utility
Yeah,
from that fund?
in the development,
With the
yeah,
city?
in the development agreement we're still working through that. I mean, I want to, it's still got to be worked through, but
Yep.
it's going to be more of a reimbursement, I think, to them is kind of the goal right now, but we're still working through
I
that.
would still do the process like we would normally, wouldn't change at
We'll,
all.
we'll have to,
And then where the money comes from.
it's where the money's coming from, correct?
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Other questions of the plan commission members? I'm not trying to rush this along just because I know it's, there's a resolution in your packet also then for each of the districts that would have to be approved. Really what what you're approving in the resolution are two things. One is the boundary, that we showed you, the boundary. And then two, the draft project plan is being approved and moved on to the city council for their action on the 10th. Our expectation is that there'll be slight modifications of the plan once we get further along in the development agreement with each of the developers. Because then we'll take the development agreement numbers that are finalized and we'll pull them into the project plan, which will change the budget numbers a little bit. But if anything, the budget numbers are going to probably go up a little bit.
Does this type of financing affect the city of New London's bonding? Is that factored in after we would do this? Because this is a 20-year TIF, then how does that affect future bonding of the city?
This will be treated like any other financing that you would do. It just would be coming from, the payment would come from a separate fund. So if you went out, Jay, and actually did a revenue bond, which probably went for 650 or 550, if you did a revenue bond, then instead of it coming to being paid by the water and sewer users, it would come from the TID fund. Same thing if this was borrowed through general obligation, instead of being levied for across all the properties in the city, it'll be paid for out of the TID fund. So it doesn't, it still counts towards your borrowing capacity and all those issues. It's just where the money comes from to pay for it.
Thank you.
And just so you know, at this point, there is no anticipation of bonding for the city until 2024, when we are working on the downtown project. And what we're hoping is that the development of this district will help alleviate some of the bonding that we'll actually have to go out for that downtown project. So hopefully in the meantime, we can borrow from ourselves to help float us until we can get some of that revenue back. That would be something that we will work through when we get that far. But so far, that's the thought process.
That's the object with putting the streets and stuff on this tip, so that you got some money for the other project when we do
Yeah.
the downtown.
Correct. So the obviously, the first anticipated expenditure is going to be moving the infrastructure so that the development can get done. And then anything that is left over from the generation of the revenue from the increase in the assessed value will be looked at and used for downtown projects, parking. So there's a number of other needs in that downtown area that have been identified in the project plan that we hope to, again, alleviate the debt that we would have to take out in 2024 to help with that downtown project.
Am I able to ask a question? I'm not on this commission, but
Absolutely.
I was just wondering if it's benefiting both sides of Water Street and North Pearl Street, why would we not include the businesses on the north side of Water Street and North Pearl Street into the TID?
I think we talked about it and didn't see necessarily that there was a benefit of including the north side, because the access point being the south of Water Street, I should say, we need to pick those up to be able to pay for, like the parking to the north and some of those kind of things. Because the boundaries have to be contiguous. You can't just jump all over the place, but they have to be contiguous. The river, you can go across the river, and that's being contiguous. The only projects that were identified in the downtown were the parking to the north and then Water Street and some beautification, which could happen on both sides of the road. That's not one or the other. That's the best answer I have for you. I don't know if there was more thought put in by the city.
No, I think what we talked about was, the reason we want to try to get over here is for that up here on the north side. So whether, we do this whole section or whether we kind of do a little bit, and we can redefine it tonight. I mean, that's what we're all talking about. But I guess in Tim's, kind of thought process, how does this affect these guys compared to these guys, whether they're in or out? I mean, that's the biggest
So
question
as
for
I
everybody.
said, the tax rate exactly the same. It doesn't impact your property value. There's the only the benefit of being in the TIF district would be I don't know the businesses, but you could have two businesses that decide that they're going to sell to somebody, and they could walk into the city and say, we have a developer that wants to walk in and build a new building in the downtown. They want to generate another, $200,000 or $300,000 in value. What could now, because they're in the boundary, what could the city do to help with that project? Could the city allocate a small amount of money to help incentivize that new developer to come in and do that? There is a slight benefit if there are redevelopment plans to be in the project, to be in the boundaries. No downside.
Okay, so that's another question I have. Like, I love this. I think it's great. I'm just wondering what would be some of the downsides to this. I know some of the language in here was acquisition for
The
right-of-ways and
broader language.
easements and
Yeah.
stuff like that. So I mean, would the downtown businesses next to the water, would they be giving up anything
No, there's no plan. I mean, again, the only things we can fund are what's in the project plan. And you saw that there's a short list. That's all that could be paid for. We can't just kind of willy-nilly say, now we're gonna do X, Y, Z, and the property owners don't know it. That's, it's clearly defined what we're gonna pay it for. We have, you look at the broader language section, we have it really broad. You could drive a truck through kind of thing because, you know, I don't know what's gonna come out of like the relocation of the utility lines and that kind of stuff. You know, there could be things that are needed. But the project scope is exactly what is identified. Again, the downside, I don't have one for you of being in the TID. You're not paying a different tax rate. You're not, everything looks exactly the same. The upside would be if you have any plans in the future to sell your property and somebody's gonna come in and build something big and brand and new and maybe they can get an incentive through this. You know, that would be about it. But there really isn't, it's not, because this is not a blight or rehab district, it's not on your, it's not even identified on your deed. There's nothing there that shows that you're in TID number 3. So we picked up the downtown, quite frankly, just for 2 reasons. One is parking is an issue. We want to be able to help all the downtown businesses with parking, to help pay for Water Street. So it's not all on the taxpayer, and some beautification and hopefully streetscaping that can happen on both sides of Water Street. That's why we really picked up downtown.
Phil, if we do change the map, at what point in the process would we do that? Does it have to be done tonight?
We would like to have it done tonight, and so that the council would act on a project plan that was more defined, and final.
If you added more properties to the TID district, you could collect more revenue for the downtown revitalization, couldn't you, in theory?
Not necessarily.
Depends what the value, what happens to the value of the properties. So for instance, if you have a couple of retail business or a vacant store or a business that goes out and all of a sudden you lose value, remember that base value is frozen. What's there today is frozen. And if all of a sudden that building loses value, it hurts the TIF. Now, if you have people investing into your businesses, then yes, you would see a little bit of a bump.
We were talking about doing a downtown project, which is beautifying downtown. That's going to increase values. I mean, in theory, right?
Well, the streetscaping would not increase the value because that's non-taxable.
Public right away.
Yeah, but it would just be the buildings. If our downtown projects spur growth in the businesses wanting to put money into their business, then that private property values go up, which would help the TID.
Right.
But it's
I
still.
think
be
that's what
improving
you're
the
saying,
curb.
Tim, right? The
appeal.
appreciation of the buildings that are within the district.
Yeah.
Just because you're putting all of this value and all of this beautification in the downtown. Right, there will be some of that, but the worry is like, so you don't want to put a business in and they go out of business, then you're going to decrease the value. So is the risk of adding more worth the difference between the appreciation that's going to happen and the chance of somebody going out of business? So you kind of have to weigh that on where you put your boundaries.
So is there any safety nets that say we hit another recession and property values plummet? Is there any kind of guarantee that we would be able to pay back if there was?
Well, there's,
Recession?
yeah, the agreement as it stands right now is it's a reimbursement back to the developer. So the developer is going to have to undertake the project before they get reimbursed back. So I hear what you're saying. What if they don't do it? And we took the money out and relocated the utilities. They're going to be hand in hand. There's going to be agreement that ties them up to make sure they do it. So that's the safeguard. Now, the value could come in less. And maybe there isn't as much money for parking and beautification and Water Street and such, but you know, I think that the driver here is the housing development. That's the driver, and as long as that happens, then it's just we're not talking big money one way or the other.
I'll just kind of throw it out there right now. I mean, I feel I kind of mentioned this in an email a long time ago. There's a property up in this upper corner that, and it's kind of far from our boundaries right now. But there's a property up here that, whether it's the current owner, whether it's a new owner could use, we need to do something with that building in the future.
Yeah.
But it is kind of, to get there, we got to go through all here. I guess now is the time, if we got to talk about adjusting this boundary, I think now is the time we got to talk about if we want to include that to have options for that property on that corner in the future.
I will say this isn't a one-shot deal. You can amend the boundaries up to 4 times. So, for instance, like you were just pointing, a developer walks in the door and says, I want to redevelop or develop on this site. You could get there by amending the current boundaries and pick that up. So this isn't a one-shot deal, and you can't ever change the boundaries. You can change the boundaries 4 times.
And so if you don't include it too, and the property comes down, so if you don't initially include it and the property comes
Yep.
down, you don't lose the value either. So maybe the best option is to say, okay, we're looking at it, and if somebody comes along, we're willing to amend, but maybe not take the hit of the
Yep.
loss.
Like I said, whether it's a current owner, whether it's a new owner.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, it just gives options in the future, but with that said, if we can, we have that option in the future, it's not locking us into not using this financial tool for that corner in the future.
I know the theater has been talked about too, is that is not inside there either, is it?
Correct. There's another example right there. We have a theater, Phil, I think it's right here.
Yep.
Yeah, right there.
So whether that needs some help in the future too, it's privately owned. But I think what Phil says, maybe it's best to leave it out at this point in time until we know what's going to happen with it, instead of throwing it in and all of a sudden the owner decides to tear it down and then the value
Right.
in your TID drops down. You don't want to do that. But just keep those back in your head for some options that we could be expanding in the future. Phil, just touch a base on the availability, because we have potential library project coming up, the availability of using TIF funds for public facilities, not available.
Yeah, not allowed. Statute is very clear that you can't use money for public buildings, library, city hall, fire, police. It's very clear that there are certain things you can't do with funds, TIF funds. Public improvements as in roadway, water, sewer, stormwater, those kind of things you certainly can. They're viewed as kind of benefiting the whole public, and they didn't want to use TIF for building libraries and stuff.
But one thing you probably want to clarify is, if you build a structure and it is public, you can probably put parking, right? As long as that's
Yep.
public parking.
Yep.
Or maybe some
Parking you could do,
landscaping.
yeah.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
No,
Right.
one thing I did, I misspoke at the last one. North Water and South Water Pearl. North is north of the river, south is
Oh,
south of the
okay.
river. So yeah, this is South Water, or
Okay.
sorry, this is South Pearl Street, south of the river.
I may need to modify the language to include north and south.
Yeah,
Yep.
because I think the first,
Yeah.
when we talked about that too, I said, we always talk about Pearl, but it actually
Yeah.
includes part of,
Right here.
right? In that first construction
Walkway.
phase. Yeah.
North and South Water, or sorry, North and South Pearl Street.
Do we need to go back to ask the public for input on this one here before we go to 4?
Yeah, and then you would need to close the public hearing on this TID and then take action, and we'll do the same thing for TID 4.
I make a motion. We have is any public comment on what's been discussed on TID 3?
And usually you ask 3 times. And then you close it.
3 times?
3 times
Yeah,
sometime.
3 times.
Is there
Then
anybody in the audience wants to make any comments? One more time, does anybody in the audience wants to make any comments? Is it close the public hearing? Into district number 3? You gotta open up
Now you'll close that one.
I think you
you
just
need a
did.
motion on.
Motion to close it,
Okay.
yeah.
I'd look for a motion to close public hearing on TID District number 3.
Also move.
I'll second it.
Motion's made and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Now we all need to open up a public hearing for
Do you
TID
want to do
District
the
number
res-
You
4.
could, it's up to you how you want to do it. You could take action on the resolution for TID 3 and then go through the same process if you want
Okay,
to.
so then we eliminate one.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. So we look for consideration on a resolution designating proposal boundaries and allowing a project plan for TID District number 3. Look for a motion.
I would make that motion.
I'll second.
Motion's made and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. So now this goes to council then, correct?
Yep.
Okay, so we had opened up a public hearing on TID District number 4. Back to you, Phil.
Motion.
We need a motion.
Oh, need a motion to open up. Okay,
I'll make that motion.
motion made. Need a second?
I'll second.
Motion made and second. to Open up a public hearing on TID District number 4. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Now, Phil.
All right, thank you. Robert's rules, gotta love them.
Yeah.
So to number 4, this is gonna seem very similar. I know the developer, Randy and Ingrid are both here. If you want to hear from them as well. So to number 4, we'll go through the map to start with as well, because I think that's just easier to orientate yourself. On page 7 is the map of the project plan that shows the location. Here, the developer came forward with a multi-phase development, multifamily, and also single family. And it's the far western portion of this TIF district boundary. And so the current layout is not completely accurate. I'll say there's a CSM that's been filed that's going to change the boundary a little bit. The goal here is to only pick up the multifamily portion of this development to be included in the tax increment district. Maybe a parcel or two, a single family may be picked up in the corner, but keeping the single family out of here, the other taxing bodies benefit from that right away. If they see single family growth, they benefit from that. The goal here, like I talked about earlier, is a couple of things. One, Southland would be extended for this development. And that will help with kind of traffic flow and such of this area. The residual revenue that would come in would help with Beckert Road and Oshkosh roads, future road projects in the capital plan as well as the city to help pay for a portion of that. So it's capturing the multifamily development to be able to help pay for some of those infrastructure improvements. We have a draft development agreement here as well, where we're looking at a reimbursement situation similar to the utility, where the cost would be paid for, then they'd be reimbursed back out of the revenue they generate, which is really an important component. So the city's not borrowing the money up front; they're being paid back over time out of their development that's occurring. I was just talking with Randy and Ingrid, and they told me the value is too low that I use. I like hearing that. I usually hear the opposite. So we'll work through a value with them as to what we would expect to see. Here, just like the last district, there are properties in here that are currently developed. If you go to page 14, it's about 37.8 acres site development. Or TIF boundary, 1,776,000 is the actual current value of the taxes collected on that. Again, will be sent to all the other taxing bodies, and the city will keep their piece of it. And then the incremental value, which is what they propose to develop, is what will be used to help pay for Southland, Beckert, and Oshkosh. So back to the executive summary. We expect these numbers to change a little bit once we get a real number from the developer as to a value for the multifamily, but we're using 3.12 million. I think that number will be quite a bit higher than that. That enables us, the section above that, to pay for about $1 million in costs. 400,000 is Southland, and then the rest would be Oshkosh and Beckett Road improvements over time as those projects come forward. Again, this is similar concept. We're looking at what's another vehicle to help pay for these projects that doesn't have to all fall on the taxpayer. Let the development help pay for some of this, and that's the goal here as well. So all the same components as the last project plan. We've had to identify, again, half-mile radius projects. Oshkosh Street and Beckett Roads on page 20 are going to be located, some of those improvements outside the tax increment district, but within a half mile. So we have identified those, which are a requirement in the project plan. Again, very simple project costs here because we really only have a few things to target. On page 24 is Southland Lane. It's Lane, right? Southland Lane. And then Oshkosh Street and Beckett Road, we're estimating about $500,000. If we get a better revised number on the development, that number of 500,000 hopefully will increase as well, so that we can have more of those reconstruction projects paid for from the TID as opposed to the levy. We've gone through the same process here of estimating increment and rezoning and all those kind of things. So this is a pretty simple plan. There's not a lot to it. It's paying for a couple of public improvements, working with the developer to divide their development. So single family happens, multifamily happens, multifamily funds the TID fund, and the single family goes to help the overall tax, the tax rate for everybody was the intent here. So I know the developers are here if you have questions of them as well. I didn't mean to shortchange this one, but I don't think you want to hear all about TIF again. Some of you the third time.
Now we can open up the public hearing.
You can.
Made a motion. We need a motion on a public
Why don't you
hearing.
ask if there's any
Don't be
questions?
asked.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's right.
3 times. Yep.
Any questions from the public on the public hearing on TID District number 4? Randy? Nothing? Anybody got any questions on TID District number 4? Going twice, going one more. Anybody got any questions on TID District number 4? Make a motion that we close the public hearing on TID District number 4.
Right, it was like, yep.
I'll second it.
Motion's been made in second to close the public hearing on TID District number 4. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Make a motion now. Would we consider on the resolution again? Should we do that?
Yes.
I make a motion that we open up the consideration and resolution of designating proposed boundaries and approved project plan for tax increment district number 4.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and second to consider possible action on resolution designating proposed boundaries on project incremental district number 4. All in favor?
Can I,
Go ahead.
with my property being in this TIF program, can I vote or should I abstain?
I would prefer you abstain.
Okay, that's what I can.
So-
All in favor when Susie abstaining?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried.
All right, thank you.
Should be done then.
We'll have revised plans for council on the 10th, and then we'll make sure Plan Commission gets the final plan as well.
Thank you.
Okay, Chad, I guess get back to the murals now.
Dave and I will tag team this. Well, I got most of the stuff here.
Scott?
Season from the Wolf River Art League has sent us some more information for murals for consideration. The first one is along the alley. You can kind of see this narrow piece of property right here in the, I don't know, the orange or pink or whatever you want to call it. Sounds like they want to do some type of conceptual design with, I don't know if they're books or records or what they are. It must be books or something like that. So
Look like albums.
albums, yep. So that's their concept there. She sent this, the last one on that, in your packet. I don't know where that was going, so I'm not sure. I didn't get anything else. This is what I got on my first round of things.
Chad, you're probably too young to remember this kind of.
Records? Oh, no. My dad woke us up every Sunday morning playing records,
Good for him.
oldies records every Sunday morning, so. They're coming back too, you know that?
I know.
Well, she also sent me a couple other ones for consideration, and most of these are from Spencer Young, the gentleman that was here last time. So the first one,
He was gonna do wildlife.
yep,
Right.
yep. So this is the first consideration. Looks like he's got a theme for what he does, but that's the first consideration. And then here's another one, and another one,
Looks good.
and another one.
Have they said anything to you about painting that silo down by Hookers?
I have not heard anything on that one yet.
I have. They do not want that painted.
You don't want it painted?
Not me. They
Filter
don't.
doesn't
Yeah,
want it
they
painted?
like it just the way it looks.
So I heard some talk about that they were talking to Hooker.
Yep, there was buzz around that and at this point in time, I don't even remember where my information came from, but it was through to Hilker.
Which property, this one or the one, the
So-
old?
Simmons.
The old
Simmons.
Simmons, where you come around the
Big
corner and they have
silo.
that.
Big silo, yeah.
Man,
Were they talking, was Hooker gonna tear it down?
I don't think so. I think they like just that look the way it is.
Okay.
Mhm.
I just heard some rumor about that. That's what I was just curious.
Yeah, I didn't, like I said, I don't have a final confirmation on that myself, but that's what my understanding was.
Okay.
And then also a last consideration, this was something for, they're talking about the bathrooms at Memorial, to put that one on there. So if you guys would bless this one, we would take it to Parks and Rec, because it's a Park and Rec facility as
On the
well.
bathrooms, bathroom doors or bathroom building?
There's a wall in the bathrooms there.
Oh,
It's-
okay, on a
it's-
wall.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
the block concrete wall
Okay.
down there.
Strange.
So not sure where that design came from in the thought process, but. So those are the ones that they've presented to us for consideration.
Are they looking for approval on those?
Yep.
Can you open one of them other pictures up again?
Sure.
That crown thing, that must be his little signature saying that he
Yeah.
did that.
And I noticed he's got little things, he must,
He's the king.
not sure where that all is, but he's got a little thing up here too, that he's got his little trademark and he's got a QR code there.
I know they were talking about advertising. I mean, is that a form of advertising if he's putting his signature on that? You know what I mean? Like, is that a big deal? It's not a big deal to me, but
I don't think it is if you don't know who it is.
all artists,
I have no idea who that guy is, so.
every artist.
Yeah, I guess most artists just put their signature on their painting, so I
Right.
don't think that's out of the norm.
So that wouldn't be considered advertising by the city?
Guess financially is not benefiting.
Yeah, we're not
Rules.
benefiting
Not
from it
making any money.
at any rate, and I don't think he's benefiting from painting it from us.
Right. I just know like the last one that we didn't like because it was a form of advertising and this is
Mhm.
kind of the same thing.
That was promoting somebody else at a third party though.
So he can promote himself.
As an artist.
Yeah,
They put their name on stuff. I mean, and that's not really advertising, just saying he did it, I guess.
All the other murals in town have a name on them.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, they do that. And I don't think that's advertising.
Mm-mm.
I wouldn't look at it that way.
So I was just asking.
Yeah. Anybody have any?
I wish
anything
he'd
else?
move it, but
I look for a motion to approve the murals that they want to put on.
So them other four of them are the ones that are gonna go on that building,
Yep.
like the rotating thing.
Yep, that was his start process to get a couple to us so he can just, whenever he's ready to
Yeah.
change it up.
3 months. I think he was looking
So we're
at
not
3 months.
approving this one.
Yeah, that
Because
one
we
I
don't
don't
know what it
understand
is. Okay.
where that one's coming from. The other ones, yes. mean,
Yeah,
the-
I
the
mean, I
records
just,
one.
yeah, I just think that we need more info on that one. If we,
Exactly.
I know downtown, I've noticed there's been some bikes, some bicycles and
Mhm.
stuff like that. So maybe they're gonna put some,
And we didn't improve that on our end. And I can see they're tucked into the private property right of way. So they're not really technically on the properties, private, public property side. Because we didn't give them any permission yet or go through a process for that at all.
Hmm.
So was there like 2 or 3, I think I've seen? Something like that.
But just so we're clear, which ones are we looking at approving then?
All of them that you saw tonight.
We saw here.
Yep. And
All of them besides that, the one that's circled.
this one,
Except
Right.
with the
Except-
exception of that one.
well, there's really no painting along with that one.
yeah.
So what is there, a total of 5?
See, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the record 6. Yep. So you got 6 murals tonight. And we haven't had time to talk to the attorney yet about modifying our ordinance like we talked about last time to see about these murals instead of having to bring them to planning commission every night. Maybe it's something that if you guys want to go that route, that it's just that the building inspector would bless, providing it's within boundaries that you guys set in the future.
The only one I have a question on is the one that's going down at Memorial Park.
Mhm.
And I guess it would maybe be up to the Park and Rec Department. I mean, I'm not sure how this fits into the feel of what Memorial Park is. I mean, so I guess would we?
Inside?
No, be on the outside.
I mean, would they at Memorial or the Park and Rec Department or committee, would they be able to say that doesn't fit with us? I mean, or, would they just go, well, the planning commission approved it, so I guess we should too. I guess I just not seeing the feel of that
agree with
when
you.
it goes to Memorial Park. I mean, I can see softball or, something.
I'm down there weekly and yeah, that doesn't quite.
I mean, I don't
It just-
have anything
it's
against
little-
it. It's just that I'm not the
It's,
feel.
it just may not be the right location. It's a
Yeah.
nice painting.
Right.
Location is that
But do
question.
we have the, if would the Park and Rec say, well, the planning commission approved that one, so I guess we will too, or should we?
I
say,
think it would
"Hmm,
start here. If that's your consensus, then,
Yeah.
well, let's have that discussion here.
it's cute, but I agree. I don't think it fits in
I mean, it seems like all the murals are very random throughout town. I don't see how this one's any different.
I don't have any objection to that mural. I mean, it doesn't look offensive by any means.
It's not offensive. I'm just like the feel of where, Mark said maybe not in the appropriate, maybe there's a different spot for it, or.
You would look at Memorial Park, a person's gonna think that they're gonna see a baseball glove,
Right.
a softball. That's what they're looking as a thought process there. That's kind of what she's saying.
Right.
Not, this would look more at Hatton Park.
Mhm.
More rustic park.
Exactly.
Roasting some marshmallows.
I mean,
Well,
not
it's
that
more
that's
rustic
wrong.
At Hatton and
Taking
there's
some
at
s'mores, yeah.
Memorial. Memorial's a sports park.
Mhm.
I
Well, I
mean,
do-
you can
I
even
do-
get by with skateboards.
I do
'cause the
know that-
skateboard park is
I
there.
don't agree. I don't particularly like a lot of the murals design that are around town. I don't like the design of them, the color of them, but it really ain't up to me as far as that might be somebody else's deal. Same thing with this. That might be somebody else's cup of tea that somebody comes down to the park for a tournament and says, hey, that's the coolest thing I ever seen.
Right.
Absolutely.
Who are you to
Absolutely.
say that just because you're at a park, that doesn't belong?
well, and maybe they're thinking kids, maybe kids would
Right.
really buy into this.
But we are
Cute
here
as can
to
be, but
That's our, yeah.
consider those.
To bless all the options. I mean, that's why we're appointed here, is to make the decisions for the people, whether we feel these are appropriate or not for the area.
Appropriate for the area, and that I would say that one probably is not.
If you guys want, I can take the feedback to them saying that the mural is, good. It's just a matter of the location, maybe find a better spot. But
Right,
on the other
what
hand,
location would you feel that would go?
I don't know.
I don't think it should go anywhere. That's me.
I don't know. I mean, I'm just thinking that it's,
Maybe a campground?
and I could take the feedback too, that you guys are interested in seeing a mural on the bathrooms, but maybe something that's more related to the park.
correct.
Jamie, I'd like to express a little bit of what you said too, is I have had a couple of constituents talk about how it's nothing more than graffiti around the city.
Yep, and I
So, I
feel
mean,
like
there is
some,
that
a
side,
couple of
too.
the buildings, like longevity, that's a nice historic old building. Obviously, I know it's not in great shape. But the whole thing is just graffitied, in my opinion, like where's the old brick, the old looking historic brick that's gone, And I don't know, I just think that these murals that are in town should be all about New London. If New London has got to approve them, there should be things about New London, like, the one on PC and Cell has got the deer and the, wildlife thing, that's all fine and good, but some of them, like the bowling alley, I just don't get that at all. I mean, that list looks like a kid went up there and, teach their own, it's just not my cup of tea, but I think there should be more guidance on what they, like that, I don't know, I don't understand it, I guess. Who am I to say who are,
I said too, I would like to see more things that relate to our history.
And I think we
you know,
could
the
ask for that
logging
and get it.
industry.
I don't think
I agree.
Season is bringing these to us, I don't think they care what they would paint, honestly. I think they just want to paint.
Mhm.
I think they have a lot of young artists. One of the girls is at the bank. I visited with her. She did the Frick
Mhm.
building, and they really don't care what it is. They just
That
want
was-
to, they just want to put a paintbrush on a building.
And that
That
one
one's
at
pretty
Frick
cool.
is pretty neat. I mean, we get a
Yeah.
lot of comments. That mural that you talked about on the bowling alley, I believe that was a passion from an artist that was a meaningful painting for them.
Mhm.
So I agree with you guys, but that's something that we have to sit here and figure out. Is that the direction that we would like to see that trend go? And what have you guys heard from the constituents, the people in the cities? And, has that been a discussion that you've heard? I mean,
oh, I've
Hear-
heard
hear that
people,
we-
I've heard people, just as many people upset about them as like them.
Mhm.
yeah, well, absolutely. And the ones that are liking them, is there any feedback that they'd like to see more of the New London aspect, our heritage? I know last time when that gentleman was here, I brought up the Brittany Water Spaniel.
Yeah.
Because that's from New London. I would like to see something like that in the same trend. But is that how everybody feels about it? Which way are we gonna represent?
My daughter was up here from Texas and she thought they were beautiful. She had her kids stand by so and get a picture taken by them.
I think we can go, I don't think you have to go one way or another. I just think at this time, we need to start putting more murals that are reflective of New London. Like the water spaniel dog or something down at Memorial that is more even skate park, anything to do with a park, you can put a kayak picture on there. River's right there. I mean, there's a lot of different things they can do. That's just not it.
So
That's just my opinion.
From what I'm understanding, that's kind of the realm of what everybody's thought is we can ask to direct it a little bit more towards city focus, the New London focus.
And also the area that they're placing the mural, that it is something that pertains to wherever the location is.
Reflect that.
I
Now, a
think-
lot of this, go ahead.
And I think one of the things, because I made the comment, like at the pool or somewhere else, and I think the Art League specifically talked about whether it's appropriate or not appropriate to put something like a picture of a car parts on the side of bumper to bumper. They didn't want to start getting into advertising, because that would start getting into a weird, then all of
Yeah,
a
but
sudden a
here's-
business is gonna
I
want to-
understand on businesses, but not on city parks.
Yep.
Because you're not, the business I get, no, we're not gonna put car parts on the side of bumper to bumper. That's not fair to the other car park companies.
Right.
But city park should be, or city property should be
Represent.
definitely representing the city.
And that's definitely feedback that we can bring back to that group.
And I'll tell you that bumper to bumper one that's on the side of there, that's the one where St. Patrick's Day Parade, right? That's the coolest one there is, just because that's all about New London, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that is like that's a snapshot of what is New London, and that's kind of the one that started everything, I think, in town here anyway. That was like one of
That
the
was
first
loud.
ones.
Oh, that was before I even moved to town. So that's been
Yeah,
13
So I
years
mean,
plus.
stuff like that is what I would look for.
Yeah.
I just feel like we already opened the box, and how do you contain it now?
We
And
can guide it.
We
Yeah.
can
We can guide it.
I mean, we already have so many
I think we have. to.
randomness in this town that
We can still channel that.
we need some consistency though, too. I mean, we've,
And I-
Oh, they.
Well, we
they
do have
present it,
consistency,
we-
'cause
we approve it.
You still have to,
And I think you can stand on it by saying, hey, there's like 50 of these here, and you're hearing things like you want to be guided towards New London.
My opinion is you need both.
And if we get more negative feedback, we can always, guide them more. if
bring
we
it
need
back to what Dave
That's why
said.
it's important that we get them approved by this group before they do them, rather than putting it on Dave's shoulders
I
to
agree.
approve them. So
Bring it-
maybe we should let them all come back. If we don't like this one, we can approve the other, was it 6
Right.
of them, the other 6?
Yep.
And tell them to come back with plan, but I think it's that we should have the say on what it is, because we're the one that's gonna get the feedback anyway. If
And
it,
probably the more eyes, the better.
Bringing it back to where Dave said, as well as having the city property reflect the city. The stuff going on private businesses, they have to have input on what goes on their building as well. I mean,
Do the
it's,
private businesses approve
oh yeah,
those
Oh, yeah.
before they come to us?
Yep.
Okay. All right.
it's unfortunate with that longevity, because my girlfriend is, her uncle Kurt was the Kurt Barber Shop.
Mhm.
And he wanted more of a river wildlife theme on that building, and there's been, now it's a city property, right? But
Technically, that one is, yeah.
it was the barber shop for a lot of years.
I was gonna bring that up, like it's city property, but it is the leased by longevity, right?
Mhm.
So does that have any like say on what the city can and can't do? You still have say on what can go on that building as far as being the owners of the building, I would assume.
I'd have to look at the lease to see what's in the lease. I don't know if there was something written specifically that they can do certain things to the facade. I'd have to look at that specific agreement or contract. Yep.
And I don't know if there's any other businesses or buildings like that around town, that is like leased
I
like that.
don't have too many that are our properties. There's plenty of people that have property and they lease it to a business or something,
Right.
private businesses. I think that's the only city one off the top of my head.
I think we just have to be a little more diligent and a little more careful with, not just having, 20 of them and we just go, yeah, whatever you want, and stuff like that. I think that we need to, really think about where they're gonna be and, what are they reflecting? And I would say we hold off on that
veto
one.
that one?
Yeah, hold off on that one.
I can take the feedback back on this one. If there's a more appropriate spot that comes
Right.
up with it, great.
Right.
And with that said, I mean, I don't want the feel of this conversation right now to have any negative
Right.
effect. There's been a lot of people, they've done a lot of good stuff. There's been a
Right.
ton of man hours that group has put in. So I think
Yes.
we just want to make sure we're recognizing
Yes.
what they've done. They put
Absolutely.
us on the news. The news has come out and recognized all that.
I bet you
coming
people
out.
are driving to New London and eating at restaurants
I
and,
know they are up on the one
right,
on Becker Road with the wings and stuff. That's why I said you need both. It
Right.
does-
I see people walking, taking pictures
Yeah.
downtown. all the time.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Like I said, I don't think it's criticism at all.
No.
I don't think they care.
Correct.
I think they just want to paint something.
and I think this is a good painting. And I agree with you, maybe wrong location.
But just more feedback of what we would like to see, because we haven't really,
Yeah.
the group hasn't done this yet.
No.
Planning Commission hasn't really given the direction. Say, yeah, let's kind of focus on doing this and give feedback and encouragement and.
So should we take that advice back to them and maybe invite them to the next planning?
That's a good idea. Let them come here so they got a feel from us if we want. and then
Yeah.
kind of-
Have a good discussion about
The only
that.
place we've had them has been the Park and Rec. I mean, they've been down to the park rec meetings.
No, they've been here.
Yeah, they've been here.
Were they here?
Oh, yeah.
They come here every time.
Yeah, that's right.
As long as it's not advertising or offensive, I don't see why this one is any different than any other one.
I don't either, just the location. The location I don't think would be, I think people would look at it and they go,
Because like Dave said before, you want maybe more New London in the parks.
I mean, honestly, I'd like to use it as some free advertising.
Mhm.
You know, if you get, on our city properties, if they paint a nice mural of that and then they come and see, oh, London does have this. You know, it's great that they're doing it.
Maybe something about the historical village.
Yeah,
Right.
there's,
To promote
yeah,
that.
I mean, trains, anything. There's all kinds of stuff down there that could easily, they could paint, and I know they would. I agree with Jay, they'll paint anything.
And I definitely am on board.
That Area
we
more.
just need to
I-
relay that to them and they will make the right decision on
Yeah,
it.
I
You
mean,
know,
I would
even
like
when
to
they
see-
painted the backs of the buildings that go along the river, that looks nice. But if they would have done the imagination thing like they did with some of them where they put windows on and it would look like a fishing village or,
See, in some of them buildings that are in the back there, when they painted them all them fancy colors and stuff, I think it brings out more of the bad than the good. Like it really makes your eye attract towards
Really?
the bad.
Couple of them.
I think just the opposite. I think it
I think
pulls
it
your
draws
eyes.
their eyes up to see the colors
Yeah.
instead of down to see the rest.
Yeah, I agree.
Hey, the other
I
thing
mean,
I
it
like
makes me
about
look
it
great at like,
is that they're cleaning up those areas too.
Yeah,
You know, when they paint, and they're not just painting, but they're cleaning up and
Yeah.
working with the owners there and it's not as,
Oh, it used to be just motorcycle parts and
Yeah.
sofas and
yeah.
old chairs.
So I give them a lot of credit for that too.
absolutely.
I guess-
So back to, we gotta still do
So I guess our consensus is to approve. We had seven, was it?
Spencer.
6.
Approve 6 of the 7?
2, 3,
We need to
4,
approve.
5.
Five out of six.
5 out of 6, yeah.
Okay. So I'd look for a motion to approve the 5 out of the 6 outside of the 2 foxes there.
I'll make that motion.
And I'll second it.
Motion's been made and second to approve the 5 of the murals. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carried. Update on planning issues and other agenda items.
Dave, you got anything in the docket for number 8? Cedar Corp will be bringing them back again sometime in the future for the future land use map. We talked a lot about the existing land use map. We gotta talk about the future or preferred land use map next.
You review the next meeting date. 26th August. 26th of August work for everybody?
Yep.
Sir. Okay. Yep, fourth Thursday. I look for a motion for adjournment.
Also moved.
I'll second it.
Motion made and second to adjourn. All